Welcome to the video, guys. It seems today is the day that a lot of people have decided to call out the SNP for their complete incompetence and the stupidity of their plans that will actually bring about their own downfall. This is something we have known for a while now, and I have said multiple times on the channel. We are obviously talking about the SNP's intention to take them out of the UK and drag them straight into the European Union because apparently that is the SNP's idea of independence. Not only that, but the SNP are also being called out for their shambolic approach to the coronavirus situation and the fact that they have since suffered severe job losses which can only be attributed to them because they control the situation regarding the coronavirus lockdown, as is reported here by The Express. Ian Blackford shamed as Scotland suffers severe job losses. You call England shambolic. Ian Blackford was put on the spot over the SNP's role in widespread job losses across Scotland's aviation and tourism industry after the delayed imposition of its quarantine policy. This is obviously talking about the SNP's party politics in relation to following England when we relaxed the lockdown, which obviously Scotland didn't decide to do. Instead, Nicola Sturgeon used it as an opportunity to be a bit more powerful than she usually would be and keep under control the people of Scotland. I said it in my video the other day, the SNP are on a blatant power trip at the end of the day, and she is using this to its maximum potential, hoping it will get her the independence that she wants, but obviously we know it won't, and as we will see in a moment, that really won't help her or the SNP. Ian Blackford was challenged over the SNP's role in the job losses the Scottish tourism and aviation industries have suffered because of the quarantine requirements the Scottish Government imposed. BBC Today presenter Michelle Hussein questioned the delay in enforcing the new rule, despite the negative impact suffered in the key sectors already facing huge threats because of the coronavirus pandemic. Ms Hussein said, in the words of the boss of Aberdeen International Airport, you've got a policy that's not even being enforced that played a role in thousands of jobs being lost in aviation and tourism. What was the point of having a quarantine policy that wasn't enforced? I'm sure you can see while people looking at this in the light of the way Nicola Sturgeon has called the quarantine plan and the way out of it, the air bridges, shambolic. You've had this policy that hasn't been enforced and has done damage to businesses in Scotland. Mr Blackford, the SNP's leader in Westminster, insisted that the Scottish Government was focused on ensuring the Scottish economy would be able to recover from the crisis the pandemic caused, yet providing it allowed them to use it as a party political tool to try and get their independence referendum that they still need to wait a good old 20 years for. He also insisted the delay in implementing the quarantine measures was the result of discussions with the other nations to agree on a memorandum of understanding. That is a load of bollocks, otherwise you would have just followed what Boris did as and when he did it. Mr Blackford said, I don't think it's a case of doing damage in Scotland. We want to make sure businesses can flourish. We want to make sure the economy comes out of this. We want to make sure that there is a plan that the economy can recover, but that we can also deal with the issue of inequality. Oh, so there it is. The SNP are more worried about being woke than actually helping the people of Scotland. Why am I not surprised? The quarantine policy is something that has been brought in across the United Kingdom. It is led by the Border Force, and we need to get to a situation that the Scottish Government had access to the data. It's taken some time to do that. Now it's in place. As you said yourself, checks on those that are coming into the country are now going to be taking place. Because we had to get a memorandum of understanding across the different governments, it's taken a while to do that. The Scottish Government has faced backlash over the past few weeks for dithering over the adoption of air bridges to kickstart the aviation business back into action after the lockdown. England announced a list of 30 countries on which the quarantine requirements will no longer apply on July 10th. The move was designed in a bid to attract tourists back to the UK following the outbreak of the coronavirus. Officials from Glasgow, Edinburgh and Aberdeen have urged Nicola Sturgeon to provide clarity as soon as possible, warning the delay has already cost the industry thousands of jobs. Now, I don't think it should be said that Nicola Sturgeon or the Scottish Government have been dithering over the past couple of weeks as it's set up there. This has been an actual plan by them to keep the power they hold for as long as possible because they know when it all goes back to normal, they will be back to being puppet governments with no control over what the people of Scotland actually do when it really comes down to it. Now, obviously, to everyone and their mother, what was discussed in the previous article about the incompetence of the SNP and the fact that they are damaging Scotland is a surprise to no one. But it leads up nicely to what I have said before about Nicola Sturgeon wanting to join the EU and how it could well be the end of the SNP because everything will be on them. And how many of the people who actually want independence from the United Kingdom really want to join the EU afterwards. I expect it would not be much of the party's supporters once they really figured out that they won't be the independent country that they all voted for. But the headline reads, Nicola Sturgeon fury, brutal warning, First Minister's bid to join the EU will end the SNP. The SNP, led by Nicola Sturgeon, have reignited the debate around Scottish independence, which culminated in a defeat for the Yes campaign in 2014. But after the UK voted to leave the EU in 2016, despite most of Scotland opting for Remain, Miss Sturgeon believes she has a mandate to take Scotland into the EU via independence, but this has led to debate surrounding the ease with which Scotland could join the bloc and the economic repercussions of independence. Tim Worstall, a senior fellow at the Adam Smith Institute, argued in his article for Forbes in 2016 that the issue could hurt the SNP, which obviously it would. As an independent nation, it's all on them, as are the decisions they make, and the people won't like it very much, let me tell you, as this article's about to go into. He claimed there is no easy way for Scotland to get in. It cannot slide through by saying it was already in, thus should have an easy time of it or anything. He added, what this means is that Scotland will need to have that second referendum, and I think I speak for many, if not most, English when I say that if they want to leave, well, goodbye and good luck. Also, that they're going to need that good luck. For the next stage would obviously be to join the European Union, as they say they want to. And yeah, luck is definitely what you're going to need, and I would kind of agree with him. If the Scottish people decide they want to leave the UK, that is entirely up to them. We wish them the best and we will say goodbye. But if they join the EU or just allowed freedom of movement with the European Union, then we would have to build a wall, that is for sure. Mr. Worstall said, from a legal perspective, Scotland could integrate easily, but it wouldn't be so seamless from an economic perspective, which is something I have discussed before. He continued, in order to join the EU, you've got to have a budget deficit of 3% of GDP or less, or be obviously, which allows for some fudging, moving in that direction, which let me tell you, Scotland really ain't. Scotland, now that the oil has plummeted, simply is not there. It's difficult, given the intertwining of British and Scottish accounts, to get it exactly right. But reasonable estimates have the Scottish alone budget deficit at 8 to 10% of GDP, so well above the 3% that they actually need. At which point, the EU won't let Scotland in, not unless they do some fiscal contraction, amounting to a good 5% or so of GDP. And that's why the SNP don't actually want what they're claiming to want, independence and then EU entry. Because imposing that sort of austerity on their own nation when they are obviously in charge and responsible would kill them as a political party, which is something I have said before in many previous videos about them. However, some experts disagree. Brussels expert Anthony Salomon wrote a report published this year that claimed Scotland could join within 5 years of becoming an independent country. It explains Scotland was previously part of the European Union for nearly 5 decades. No, the United Kingdom was. Scotland was a part of the UK. That is the end of it. That is not the same as being part of the EU. I am sorry, no matter how much she wishes it was. Well, these articles show just the complete shit show that the SNP are, but there is also something that this one has missed out when it relates to the Scottish economy, and that is the simple fact that they do not even have their own currency. How are they going to be an independent nation with no currency or central bank? These articles have completely left that out, but I suppose it didn't really matter. At the end of the day, the austerity would literally kill the SNP as a political party if they was to get independence and then try to join the EU. And let's not forget, as time progresses, people will use the fact that the SNP was in charge of the coronavirus lockdown and almost everything relating to it. So what's happened up there in the last few months is all on them and not Boris Johnson, regardless of what they'll try and push. As we know, it is the SNP. This is what these Scots nat twats always seem to do. But as always, I want to say a massive thank you to everyone who supports the channel, and my other social media links are down in the video description if you want to come and support me on Twitter, BitChute and a variety of other platforms, including my second YouTube channel. As I said, all links are down in the video description.
There is a pattern consistent throughout history of oppressed people turning on the oppressors. slaves against their owners, the peasantry against the feudal barons, colonies, Mr. Verhofstadt, against their empires. And that is why Britain is leaving. And it doesn't matter which language you use, we are going, and we are glad to be going. We're off.